Hey, what's going on, everyone? Nick and Shane here from the Riddler Show to talk about the Batman. Full spoilers review coming at you. Shane, how are you doing on this Monday?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about this because we did our non-spoiler review, and I had so many things that I wanted to say that obviously I could not spoil for you or the audience. So I'm excited to dive into those now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, I guess the first thing we'll touch on, we'll get maybe the easier stuff out of the way, and I just want to say, seeing it in a Dolby AMC theater that had amazing picture, amazing sound, it was phenomenal. Just the score from Michael Giacchino was fantastic. All the other audio tracks, like you were saying before, with the Nirvana,
Yep.
super fitting for that dark, very grungy and depressing vibe that the movie had. And I loved when certain parts of the movie, like when bullets were being shot, the fight scenes, when Batman had his I guess the Batmobile,
Yeah,
his muscle
that was
car.
the one that stood out to me.
Oh
That thing
man,
sounded like a rocket ship.
yeah,
It
that's
kind of is, right?
yeah, like, cause I'm wondering, I'm like, what engine is that he's working on?
Yeah.
Like, oh, and then like the car is, being covered up, but you know, just when that thing lit up in the side,
Oh yeah, that was a great
by the
little
hallway or
intro.
the alleyway,
Yep.
and I just smiled because I'm like, oh my god, this is great. But yeah, no, like the cinematography was great, a lot of great shots. You had said before in the non-spoiler review that the movie was very dark. Only a couple scenes that were like in the sunset or maybe sunrise,
Yep.
moments, which was great because it definitely kind of kept the in the shadows atmosphere. Whereas
Yep.
the Nolan trilogy, a lot of it did take place during the day.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the good things I like about this movie that separates it from the Nolan trilogy is that this is all primarily at night because
Yep.
Batman is, it's, bats are often out at night, not during the day, so to speak. So, and he just slept as Bruce Wayne during the day,
Yeah.
and did work in his little bat cave and to just make him be a little bit more emo. But yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
the
my take on that.
atmosphere they absolutely nailed
Yeah,
in this one. Whereas, like we talked about comparing it to the Nolan films in the spoiler-free one, and whereas I think Nolan does a little bit better of a job in like the big set pieces
sure.
and maybe some of those thematic moments. He kind of hits, but that's kind of Nolan's thing, right? He's like over
Right.
the top on thematic elements, hitting you over the head with it a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and whereas this one was much more intimate. That's probably the best word I can use to describe it. Comparing it to the Nolan films, is even the moments that were big felt small, and they did
Yeah.
it through some cinematography tricks. Like during that car chase, almost all of the shots were like close-ups or like attached to the car. There weren't very many like big helicopter shots tracking them or anything like that. It felt
Right.
like you were very in the action,
Yeah.
uh, and it really like I missed some of the big moments from the Nolan films, but I also can't really think of it any other way given how this sort of atmosphere played out throughout the whole movie. Like it totally made sense for those to be kind of more intimate fights and intimate car chases given how the rest of this film works.
Right.
So it's kind of like I wanted to see it, but it doesn't fit in the movie, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
It does, and I like the separation between the two, and I do appreciate the moments where we are meant to feel more present in
Hmm.
those scenes, right? So, and of course, seeing some of the parts from the trailers that are in the movie, you kind of already know what's going to happen, right? But it's still,
I didn't like that.
yeah, like,
Arguably the coolest shot in the entire movie is that Batmobile flying through the flames and then him upside down walking towards him, and it was
yeah,
in the trailer.
yep,
It's like that is your big shot for the whole movie, and it's
yep,
just in the trailer.
yeah,
And I know that probably wasn't a Reeves call; that was probably a studio call.
I think so too.
Uh, And yeah, I actually had that problem with a couple of things in this movie. I hate when trailers show things from like the third act, so you're looking for them the whole movie.
Yep.
And the big one in this one was the Riddler arrest scene,
Yep.
which I assumed was like the first scene of the movie when I saw the trailer.
Yeah.
Right? I
I
assumed
thought it
it
was
was
gonna be
like the
Act One.
Joker intro,
Right.
like in The Dark Knight. It was like that little intro bit, but with the Riddler. And then it turns out that's like a big climax of the movie. I'm like, why would you put that in the trailer?
Yeah. Looking back at the trailer, and I think as much hype as the trailer generated, I think the trailer was a very big disservice to the movie
I
itself.
agree. Yeah, it
And
was.
I agree though with you. Like that is a pet peeve of mine where we watch these trailers and then people just, which is I guess sort of natural, where people will look and wait for these scenes to come across the movie, or TV show even, and it's like, oh, we haven't seen it yet. So we're halfway through the movie. So it has to be in the second half or the second or
Yeah,
third act. And then we see it and we're like, well, why did we see that in the very beginning of the trailer itself? Like it's
yeah,
just, yeah, it's almost like I really wish they would, you know, they make trailers just very, very extra teasery.
yeah,
Or not these 1 2 minute long trailers. Just every trailer you get from now on is 30 seconds.
yeah.
That's it.
And
You
that's all
know,
you really need, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's just the way things have always been, but it does seem like they're getting worse about like showing too much in these trailers. And this one, like, even had you just seen the trailer out of context, like you can't figure out what the story is, but then it's like it's almost spoiling the movie for you in certain ways as you're watching it.
It is, and I think another cool part that I initially liked in the trailer, when Batman's getting fired at,
Yeah.
by the machine guns, and it's just all dark, and the only lighting you see is from the bullets
Yep.
being fired. Like I loved that in the trailer, but I knew what to expect when the movie was happening. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
here's that part from the trailer, and it's like
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. It made me smile because it was a cool shot, but it takes away from the weight of the movie.
Yeah, and it's weird. It almost feels like if you were to watch a trailer for a comedy and
Hmm.
they put literally the biggest jokes in the trailer, and then you go see the movie and you're like, I mean, I laughed a little bit, but the funniest jokes I had already seen.
Right.
It's kind of like this, where it's like the movie is really good, but I felt like some of the biggest moments and the best shots were in the trailer already. And so it just detracted from the impact that those shots would have had I not seen them going into the movie.
Yeah, it's almost like it would probably be a little bit better to put out a terrible trailer and then just keep all the good stuff in the movie. And then and of course, people online would make videos like, oh my God, this trailer was garbage.
Yeah,
This movie or
it's a
show is going to
balance,
suck.
right?
But then it's like, you go to see the movie and you're like, oh my God, like they totally steered us in the wrong direction with this trailer. And it's like, that's the idea. And again, I know not everyone's going to see it that way as we're explaining it, but I would probably rather, see one cool thing and then keep everything else
Yeah, yeah.
hidden. And
I
and,
mean,
and
it's so typical. Like everyone wants to hype it up for fans and like give
sure.
them the big like because it debuted at a convention, right? The DC
Yeah.
Con or whatever. It's the
Yeah.
exact same
Disney
thing that like
fandom.
Star Wars did with Palpatine, where
Yep.
it's like we want to get the biggest cheer from the audience in the room. We don't care what impact it has on the movie. We just want these crazy fans to go insane for a moment. It's like that's not why we make movies or any like why are we doing this?
Yeah. No, I agree. And to to talk about the acting,
Mhm.
um, someone had asked me if Robert Pattinson mumbled in the movie, and I
No,
and I was
I
like,
don't think so.
I don't think he did. I could understand him pretty well,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that he didn't try to mask his voice
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not
uh
like Christian
like
Bale.
Christian Bale,
Yeah.
which if you change your voice like this, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can understand me as clear as just talking a little bit lower
Yeah.
like this. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I could see the criticism, but I don't think it's fair. Listen, I liked Robert Pattinson in this. I thought
He was
he
great.
he played Batman very, very well.
He
Um,
played him as Edward Cullen, and it was
yeah,
great.
yeah. So I think for people that might not be super familiar with his outside works that probably saw the Batman, hopefully, this has sparked a new interest for him in their eyes. Again, he didn't play Bruce Wayne that much. He was in the cowl for most of this movie, which
Mhm.
I appreciated. But I think you had said in our non-spoiler review, Alfred really isn't in this movie
No,
very
he's
often
not. He's not
at
at all.
all, and I'm like, damn,
Yeah. And
and
they got
especially
such a good like Andy Serkis is great. And in that one
he
little
is
scene where he's in the hospital bed,
right.
like he does put on a good performance. You asked me how he was as Alfred, and it was hard to
Yeah,
answer because I'm
I
like he
saw
has
why.
one scene where he's good in it, but then he's just not really in the movie.
Yeah, some of the banter that takes place before the bomb goes off, um, and which was good. And there's the
Mhm.
part where Bruce is like, "You're not my father," and he's like, "I know, Master Wayne. I'm not your father." But it's like
That was kind
he
of
he
it.
kind yeah, like there wasn't much aside from that other than when Bruce is alongside his bed and he's like, "Why didn't you
Yeah,
tell
that was a
me?"
great little scene.
Yeah,
I like
loved
that.
that scene between them. That
I
was
think we did need a bit more of a gap between um, when he goes to Falcone and gets that information and then reverses it. It
yeah,
felt a little like Chewbacca dying. He's dead. No, he's not.
a little
It's
bit,
like
yes.
learn this, or it's. Let's go to a different Star Wars example. It would be like if you learn Darth Vader is his father, and then like 5 minutes later, it's no, he's not.
Right.
Right? It's like
Yeah.
this big, huge moment, and it would have been more interesting if maybe he let that affect his behavior for a good 10 or 15 minutes, and maybe it sent him down the wrong path, and then he learns the truth later. uh
Right.
so that, I mean, minor quibble, but no, I thought that was it was cool to kind of reframe his parents that way. Because I think that's actually in a couple of the comics. Like it kind of Frankensteined it together from a couple of different sources, and
Yeah.
I thought that was a nice little like Falcone in this one is more interesting than Falcone was in Batman Begins. He's got a little bit
Yes.
more duality to him, and you think like, oh, maybe he's not that bad, but actually he's very bad.
Yeah, no, I really loved John Turturro's portrayal of him.
Yeah, so
Like
that
when I
was the
saw
guy
him
I
and
didn't
I was
want
like,
to mention.
"Oh shit."
Yeah, in the non-spoiler
Yeah.
review, I was like, okay, there's an actor who I want to mention right now, but he's not in any of the trailers, but you'll recognize him. And I didn't want to say it, but yeah, when he
Yeah.
shows up, it's like, oh, there he is.
Yeah, and just like you said, I'm glad the trailer didn't spoil that.
Yeah.
And I get it, people like him as an actor, which would have given more reason to see it on top of what we already know, who's in it. But he did a great job, and yeah, kind of playing this. I'm a good guy. It's okay. Like
Right.
I was in good relations with your father. Thomas Wayne, and yeah, I like what he said. What Bruce said to Falcone though is like he just was holding up the Hippocratic oath, and he's like Hippocratic oath.
Yeah.
He actually played like a really good gangster.
Yeah. No, he's
And
good. One thing that I found interesting about the plot of the movie was I leaned over to my wife about an hour in, and I was like, Falcone is the rat with wings because they're saying his. I didn't explain this whole thing, but I just said that line to her, and like you can imagine the smugness on my face whenever they reveal that later.
yeah,
But the reason I found out was not because I'm like super smart, but I kept wondering why they kept pronouncing it Falcone instead of Falcone.
yeah,
I was like, he's Italian, right? So you'd pronounce the E at the end. But I think it was like they wanted the audience to make that draw between Falcon and Falcone.
yep,
And like I caught on to that like little weirdness right away. And I was like, oh, they're saying it like Falcon. Okay. Now, yeah. So
yeah.
I thought that was a little weird.
Yeah, I especially when they were when they were, trying to figure it out, and they're talking about, Penguin,
Yeah.
and I thought back, to Batman Returns. I'm like, wait, there were a lot of pigeons around, Penguin in the old movie, but also I'm like, that's not. I don't think it's Penguin. Yeah, I didn't think it was him to be the rat. And I'm like, well, what else has wings besides the bat? And yeah, Falcon kind of made sense. So, but I thought that was really cool the way they played it out, and of course, played it right into Riddler's hands when he just shot him when he was brought into the light. I thought a lot of the riddles were very well done.
Yeah,
Um,
let's talk about Riddler because
yeah,
I think he was a pretty compelling bad guy.
yeah,
He's not Heath Ledger as the Joker because that's like a, you know,
that's a
generational type of
right,
performance.
right.
Like, there's no way you're ever gonna top that.
Yeah, no,
Uh, but I thought he did a really good job, and this movie was oddly funny at times, and he was funny in it. Like all those little cute cards that he would leave,
yeah,
and then like maybe what got like a pretty good amount of laughs in my theater was when it shows the video of him. He's like, "Thanks for all the comments. We hit 500 followers." I'm like, "Oh my god."
yeah. I think we had a couple of chuckles when that happened. I was like, oh
Yeah,
my
that was good.
god.
And then the thumb drive got a lot of laughs
Yeah,
too.
that got some laughs.
But I think Paul Dano was good. I think he did a really good job. I didn't want to spoil this in the non-spoiler review, but I did mention that the intro to the Riddler was great.
Yes.
That little shot where the guy walks away and you just see his eyes in the background is so like my whole theater gasped. It was
Yep.
so great. That's just like such a good introduction by being like basically just playing with light, right? Like
Yep.
that's a cinematography trick. That's
Yep.
not like a plotting trick.
Yep. Yeah, and that was one of the great things again by doing things like that with cinematography at night.
Hmm.
You get more options and to do cool things like that. Uh, yeah, I loved Paul Dano's portrayal like all the way through.
Oh, he's great.
Went before he got arrested, after he got arrested, with the mask on, with the mask off, like mask off or get up off rather. But also it was there was similarities and I guess we'll say correlations between what takes place in this movie and say what we see in The Dark Knight, right? Where
Yeah,
there's a lot of people wearing the Joker's masks. Then we see a lot of people, or the clown masks rather.
yeah,
We see a lot of people wearing the same getup that the Riddler has, especially
yeah,
at the end when they're in the garden. And uh, I think the other cool part was the when Batman goes into the nightclub, very similar to when
I
we see
loved
that
the atmosphere of all
in Dark
that.
Knight. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
dude, those club scenes
those
were
club scenes
great.
were dope.
Loved them. Yeah. And um yeah, I guess the other cool part I liked about I guess maybe I'll say again the correlation between the two movies is that um the Riddler is very much different than what we saw from Heath Ledger's Joker. Um and I still think that the Riddler was very um he's very creepy, but it was also very like evil at the same time. Like they did some things in this movie that I didn't expect them to do, right? Like they shot the mayor, the mayor elect.
Yeah,
They blew up the seven different trucks that essentially flooded the city. And I'm like, yeah, a lot of people died, most likely that they didn't show from that as well. And of course, the was it the AG that had the bomb around his neck,
yeah,
with
yep,
the cell phone hand. I saw
yep.
something today that said that Paul Dano wanted to shoot that scene like 200 times, but they didn't. And I'm like, that right there is insane. Wanting to shoot that 200
You mean
times.
Matt Reeves wanted to?
I thought it was Paul Dano said that he wanted to do
Oh,
that.
maybe I don't know.
Um, I could check really quick while we're talking, but nonetheless, like again, the all the deaths that happened with with the major characters that were involved with everything, right, were pretty gruesome.
Yeah,
You know,
that
and it's
explosion was
yeah, and
pretty crazy.
And then when Batman's on the table and he wakes up, right, and all the cops are around him, I
Yeah.
love that scene.
Yeah, where he
Love that scene.
punches him right in the face.
Yeah. It's like, you could have held back your punch. He's like, I did.
Yeah, that was good.
Um,
Um, no, I think that was a pretty intense scene. Like, it's always good to have like a ticking clock mechanism in any scene because it ramps up the tension right away. I mean, that's like screenwriting 101. Give yourself a ticking clock kind of thing.
yeah.
And I really liked that scene, and it was really like interesting to show like just how deep all that corruption went because he would rather die than give up his secrets, and that's a pretty compelling argument. uh, but no, I think the corruption, like the story that I thought was pretty interesting was the similarities between Batman and Riddler. The statement it's trying to make on during that whole speech where he's in Arkham,
Right.
where he's like, you and I, or not, I mean, he doesn't know he's talking to Bruce Wayne, or at least I don't think he does. But he's saying, Bruce Wayne and him were basically the exact same person. Bruce Wayne just had money and he didn't.
Right.
And that's kind of the root of all evil in his mind. And I think that's like, it's a cool little way of framing society that way. I mean, it's a statement on, it's doing almost the exact same thing that The Dark Knight Rises did, but it's doing it with much more precision. Dark Knight
Yes.
Rises was kind of the same thing where Bane's like, oh, these rich people eat the rich kind of thing, and like announcing it to the audience. But
Yeah.
this one was a little bit more subtle. And I really appreciated that. I think it told that, like, if you're trying to make that statement on society as a whole about income inequality and rich versus poor, I think this movie did it better than Dark Knight Rises did.
Yeah, I agree. And I didn't think that the Riddler figured out that Batman was Bruce
I
Wayne.
don't think he did either.
I think he's just
It was a nice
saying
little
it.
red herring, though.
Oh, for sure.
Like, I thought he knew, and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna get really interesting," and then they pivoted.
Yeah,
It's
because there's the one camera shot that goes to the video camera that's listening. Well, not listening,
right,
but just
right.
looking in. And I'm
Yep.
like, oh shit, are
Is
they gonna put?
everyone gonna find out kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
because that would be crazy for them to kind of come to this conclusion. And the first Batman movie of Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves,
Yeah.
which will
They
probably,
Iron Man it at the end.
yeah, exactly. They're gonna do an Iron Man here, which would be really interesting, especially if, or since Bruce Wayne is very young uh, in the Batman role here. So, uh, but overall, great scene when he's talking to him in the jail cell, and even after the fact. Actually, let's talk about that real quick. So, is that Druig from the Eternals who was in the other jail cell that was
Yes.
talking to him? Okay,
Yes. He's also in Killing of a Sacred Deer and Dunkirk.
Dunkirk. Yes, that's
What's his
right.
name? Barry Keegan, I think is his name.
Ye-
But he's
yeah, I
great
forget his
in
name.
everything else that he's in.
Yeah,
And so I I think he'll be a pretty compelling Joker. I know that everyone's like, don't do Joker again. And I get that because there's been so much Joker lately. I mean, we had this is our fourth Joker since, if you
it's a
include Heath
lot.
Ledger. It's a lot.
It's a lot. Like I guess one of my problems with DC and them always wanting to do a Batman, and with the number of Batmans we've had over the years, um, you know, compared to, I guess the closest thing we've had is Spider-Man, when we've had three different Spider-Mans.
Yeah.
But to think about how many Batmans we've had over the years since Michael Keaton, right?
Yep.
It's been way too many. And again, Jack Nicholson being the first Joker, and that's not including the Adam West Batman, of course.
Yeah.
But I really appreciated what they did by including the Riddler, because we haven't seen the Riddler since Jim Carrey,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
the fact that, and then same thing, we haven't seen the Penguin since Danny DeVito.
Yep.
The fact that they were including those two characters as villains, I'm like, this is going to be great. We're kind of going outside the box here, finally.
Yep. And then you
And
see Joker again.
yeah, I'm like, I'm like, please let that be like Two-Face or something like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
but so
I I'm cautiously optimistic because I think Matt Reeves has a very good plan. I saw an interview with him where he was saying that his sort of uh, plan for the Joker is that he has a disease that makes him not stop laughing ever, and he, which I guess is an inspiration from an older 1950s or something film that he
mm,
saw, and I forget what it was called, but the character in that had the same disease, and so he's like, what if I took this disease, and that was like, the Joker is his like dark way of dealing with that disease as he grew up. And I was like, okay, I mean, it can work. I don't want to discount it yet because it's so easy to say like this is going to be terrible and then it's not.
sure.
And
Yeah.
just like Robert Pattinson as Batman or Heath Ledger as Joker, like all of these things, people are like, oh, this is not going to work, and then oh, it worked.
Yeah,
And
I don't wanna quickly say that it's not going to work. I think my only criticism is, can we just do a different villain that
yeah,
doesn't get a lot of spotlight, right? Like,
yeah.
there are a ton of villains that exist within Batman's realm, and we could
But
have done
which
something
one
else.
sells tickets?
Well, I think in terms of, what's also very popular too, like, I think we could have, um I I hate to say it, but we could have just, maybe brought in Mr. Freeze,
Yeah,
which again we haven't
honestly,
seen since Arnold did it.
I think I would
Um,
have preferred that. Like, if you give me, like, a grounded Mr. Freeze,
yeah,
that'd be kind
yeah,
of cool.
non-cartoony,
Yeah,
like
like, he's
Arnold's
not making
was.
puns all
Right,
the
yeah.
time.
Yeah, so look, I would have even, been okay with another Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy is very
Yeah,
popular, and I think in the other realm of kinda going outside the box too is you have a female villain,
yeah.
which we don't really see a lot of those.
Yeah,
We
it's true.
had
We haven't uh,
so I don't
since
always
Uma
count.
Thurman, right?
Yeah, since Uma, so I don't count Catwoman as a
No,
villain
she's
really.
gray.
She's a
Yeah,
she's like an anti-hero at times.
yeah. And Zoe
Even like
Kravitz was great in this, by the way.
she was.
I think that is probably my favorite Catwoman portrayal on screen that I've seen.
I had a brief conversation, with a friend of mine, um, and he brought up a good point because again, he's very knowledgeable in the Batman realm, and he hasn't seen this yet. But to him, Michelle Pfeiffer is top tier. I haven't seen Batman Returns in a while. It is I want to watch it, hopefully this week, and 'cause it's been a long time since I've seen her portrayal of it. But um, aside from Michelle Pfeiffer, I think Zoe has been the best. Better than Hallie, better than Anne Hathaway.
Yep.
So as of right now, Zoe did a great job. I liked her chemistry with Robert Pattinson, and as Catwoman and Batman. I like that there was this romance, to their relationship because it was that holds true to the comics.
Yep.
So again, I liked that they went in that direction,
Yeah.
writing wise. So yeah, she
Because
was
they
great.
didn't really do that in Rises.
No, they didn't. And that was one of the comments that criticisms I'll say I had of that film was, where's the connection between Batman? We got it at the very
Right.
very end, like the
Right.
last
Right.
scene
Right.
of that
Where they
movie.
run away together.
Yeah, where
Yeah.
like Alfred's like, oh, they're dead. Just
Yeah.
kidding.
Right. Which is a
And
great
then
ending, by the way. And
sure.
that's what I kind of mentioned in the spoiler for your review, that the ending of this felt a little flat compared to those movies. Like all three of those Nolan Batman movies. At the end of Begins,
Hmm.
it's like you get the calling card of the Joker. He's like, I never said thank you. And he's like, and you'll never have to. And
Yeah.
flies away. It's like,
Yeah.
boom, like cut to black. That was like a big moment, right? Then Dark
Yep.
Knight, you've got like where he's running away and, the hero we deserve, all that stuff.
Oh
And then
yeah, sure.
Rises, you've got like Joseph Gordon Levitt rising through like all
Yep.
of that was just so good that like the ending of this movie, where it's just like him riding on a bike, felt a little small. which is kind of indicative of the whole movie. Like, is much smaller in general, but
Yeah.
like it wasn't like when it cut to black, I was like, oh, super hyped up, or like every Nolan movie does. So it felt a little bit missing for me there, but overall, it was still good.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the third act?
We can, absolutely. I think you made a comment of it in the review. And I happened to have my watch on when I was in the theater, and I hadn't set it to, theater mode. Um, and there was at one point I looked at it and I was like, holy shit, it's 8 o'clock. Because I saw the movie at 6 p.m. and I'm
Right.
like, we'll probably be done by 9, right? And I'm like, damn, these 2 hours flew by.
Yep.
But that last hour
It
kind
drags.
of dragged on a bit. And I get it. There was more of the drama, the dialogue, the detectiveness going on. But I almost think that the movie probably could have been shortened by like 15, 20 minutes,
Yeah.
and still had the complete emphasis that it does. So
It's got it's got a problem where the climax of the movie, the peak of the movie, where I think it dramatically hits its peak, is when Batman and the Riddler are in Arkham.
yes,
Like, I think that's the equivalent scene of, I guess, like in The Dark Knight, where Joker and Batman have their final duel, kind of thing.
yeah,
Uh, Everything after that feels a little like tacked on, kind of, where it's like it's just less interesting. Part of it, I think, is because he's not fighting the Riddler anymore, and you don't like the Riddler is uh like he's accounted for. Like
right,
he's off. What they say, and in like war, it's like he's out of the game or something like that in Top
yeah,
Gun.
yeah. He's out of the game.
So it's like, now that the Riddler is not this like imposing force throughout the whole movie, then it gets a little less interesting. And like that
Yeah,
whole scene with like the faceless people, and I get the point of the scene, that it's like he inspired them and Batman also inspired them, kind of thing, because the guy says like, I am vengeance, and
yeah,
it's like he's Batman is realizing that his impact is not entirely positive in this story. And
yep,
I get that it's thematically important, but it's just less interesting to watch. And then it
yeah.
had the Return
I
of the
can
King
agree to
syndrome
that.
at the end, where it had like 8 different endings. And
Yeah,
I mean, like, I really thought it was gonna end with like, that scene where they're like helicoptering the girl out of there,
yep.
and like he puts his hand on her, and then she
And it
like
looks
smiles, kind
down.
of thing. I thought it was going to be like that, and then like maybe he like turns around and there's just like because it was at sunrise or sunset or something, and it's like
Yeah,
silhouetted
sunrise.
him
Yeah,
against the sunset, and then that's
yep.
the end of it. And it wasn't. It went
Yeah,
on for like 15 more minutes.
yeah. I stopped looking at my watch after that because I'm like, I feel like I'm gonna keep checking it and seeing how much time is left and where we're at, and not expect the ending. But I'm like, man, that is such a that would have been a cool take, as the camera's looking down on him, that um he's got his face all dirtied up, and he's beaten up. He just went through a hell of a battle, and he's saving people's lives. And you could have had this like sort of narrating montage, very much like Christopher Nolan's films, but just doesn't it doesn't happen.
Yeah. It was
And
like rife for the taking, and they didn't take it.
exactly. And I think the other part is when uh when he's talking with Catwoman, with Selena, and they're like, she's like, come away with me, and he's like, I can't, and of course he looks back, and they're both riding on motorcycles, and she goes left, he goes right, and he
Yeah.
looks back, and she didn't look back though, and I was
And
like,
that's
ah,
your last
damn,
shot. Yeah, she
yeah,
also disappears. Did you notice that? She like
yeah,
fades away.
yeah,
Weird.
yeah, the CGI effect there, right,
Yeah.
right. Um,
Yeah, I felt that you almost could have flipped it. Like, you
yeah,
could have had that scene, and then you could have had the helicopter scene, because it doesn't really matter which of those scenes plays first from a chronological perspective, right? Like, that could have probably worked if you just, maybe when it comes out on DVD. I'll flip it around
Flip
and
it
see how that
around.
plays.
Right,
Uh,
right.
yeah, I wonder, like, this is kind of a COVID movie problem, right? Where I feel like sometimes they might have too much time to think about these things.
Maybe,
Like, that
yeah.
movie's been on the cutting room in the cutting room for, like, a year,
Got
and
pushed
that's,
back
like,
quite a
way
bit.
more than most like, I almost, am more picky about editing now because 'cause I'm like, "You've had so much time to
Yep,
work on this." Like, there
yep.
is no excuse for
I
pacing
agree.
to be wrong. You could have test run this thing so many times.
Could test run it a year ago and then had a
But
year to edit it.
yeah, and sometimes I wonder if, like, editing it too much actually kind of detracts from it. Because if you look at, like, the special editions of, like, uh, Star Wars, right?
Mhm.
Um, the more editing shit he does to those films, the worse he makes them. And, like, I get that, like, he's trying to improve them, but, like, it
Right.
just keeps getting worse. It's like, no, just stick with the original plan. So I wonder if, like, sometimes if you're kind of out of that zone of making the movie, then maybe like you get uh, a little like out of the atmosphere, and it detracts from it a little bit. But that's my editing COVID rant for the episode.
Yeah, no, I think in terms of editing goes, then the closest thing I say I have to any editing was in my music career, and having to be in the studio and listen to songs and going through like the mixes and masterings and what we want to, you know, cut out and whatnot. Like it does take time, but I think there's definitely overthinking problems that
Yeah.
could be there, and I think with because this was pushed back numerous times during COVID, uh, it could have been a disservice to the final
Yeah.
product. And I don't know if we'll get any deleted scenes. I think there were a couple scenes, and I think there's one in particular that did involve the jail cell scene between Riddler
Yeah.
and Joker, that was cut when I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it had the Joker walking by the cell
Oh, I don't
that
know.
Paul Dano was in. Oh, maybe I forget who. Someone told me this.
Was it like in a trailer or something?
No, I think it was like a rumor or something that kind of came to the surface about. There was a deleted scene where I can't think of his name, that plays that Druig, Barry, whatever
Barry
his name is,
Keegan.
Barry Keegan. So apparently Barry Keegan walks by the jail cell of, or one of the two, but either way, there's an exchanging of words between the two of them, and that's where like you kind of get a better look of who it is. But I think the idea with that is it's too much of a dead giveaway. Like that's got to be the Joker, right? So
Got it.
whereas this is a little bit more ambiguous, you kind of hear the chuckling, but it's not quite.
I thought it was
Maybe
Two-Face at first, just because he
that's what I'm
kinda
saying.
looked like Two-Face, but no, it's definitely the
Yeah, like
Joker.
because you only see one inside of his face, and
Yeah.
it looked kind of messed up, and I'm like,
But
oh my
I think,
god,
like, they probably wanna save Harvey Dent for later, because
as
that's a
someone
whole
who comes out.
story.
Yeah, yeah, and that'd be interesting if they did that.
I mean,
You
they killed
know,
the GA, so Harvey is next in line, right?
yeah,
It'd be
yeah.
nice to get a movie with Harvey Dent where he does not turn into Two-Face
I was
as
gonna
the
say,
sequel. Like, maybe he's, just Harvey Dent throughout the whole movie.
yeah. So what I was gonna say is maybe, so here's my slight problem with going into the future of this possible trilogy, um, where I saw online that yeah, so it does say Paul Dano wanted to do 200 takes of the Riddler's phone scene.
Okay.
But there's another one that the Riddler website seemingly teases the Batman
I saw
sequel,
that. Yep.
and I think we even said this in the non-review, non-spoiler review, that there's probably going to be a trilogy that comes out of this, which
Yep.
that's just the lay of the land these days. There's going to be a trilogy, especially with these big names, right? And I want to see a trilogy come out of this universe here. I It'd be ironic to see if we got Harvey Dent and the Joker in the
Yeah.
second,
Yeah.
the middle Batman movie.
He's really gotta tread like, Reeves
Like,
has to tread carefully with that
I
because I'm
know
sure he's got so many ideas, but, like, sometimes it's
it
just
almost
like
hits
you
too
have
close
to
to
read the
home.
room. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
like
I
I'm
agree.
sure he has great ideas going forward, but it's like sometimes the timing just isn't right.
And it could be completely different, right? Like the
Yeah,
way
it could.
he portrays
Right.
both Harvey Dent and the Joker
Yeah.
could be completely different than what we got in the Dark Knight. But the fact of the matter is that we still have those two characters in their prime roles of
Yeah.
that second movie. Like again, you could have Harvey Dent in it, and he doesn't kind of go into Two Face until the third movie. So maybe Two
Yeah.
Face is the one of the main villains in the third movie.
Yeah.
And
And
you've got
I worry a little bit about too many villain syndrome. Because that happens a lot where it's like the first movie you get one villain, second movie you get multiple, and then third one. It's like the Spider-Man thing with the Raimi trilogy. First one's just Green
yeah,
Goblin. Second one, I guess it's just
just
Doc
Doc
Ock
Ock,
in that one. But then the third one, it's like there's four or something.
Sandman, Green Goblin,
It's just like
Venom ish, whatever.
and Green Goblin 2.
Yeah.
Uh,
So let me ask you this then. Do you think the Penguin, because he's still in the streets, he's not arrested. Do you
yeah.
think he'll come back? Or do you think Colin Farrell will prize his role as the
So
Penguin?
there is going to be, I think this is confirmed. There's going to be an HBO Max show based on the Penguin. I'm pretty sure that's already announced.
Yeah.
And so I think it might be interesting if he kind of assumes that Falcone role in the second one. I kind of don't want to see Paul Dano again, just because, like, I don't know, it can get a little samey if he were to come. And maybe it's like a Scarecrow thing where like he shows up for 5 minutes in the second one.
I think we could probably see him, in Arkham, right? Like maybe
Yeah,
whoever the main villain or villains are, like Penguin and say Joker, right? Um, Maybe we could actually see Batman go to Arkham and question the Riddler about what he knows. Like
yeah,
maybe someone at Arkham was like, "Hey, I saw, Riddler talking with this guy, the Joker. Like, maybe you want to ask him, Batman." And then Batman goes and and spends another 5 minutes in the cell with him again, and Riddler's like, "We meet again behind the glass,"
it's like
sort of thing.
James Bond, where he goes
He,
to Blowfield to get info on the next villain, which I
right?
don't think James Bond did that particularly well either. So it is
Yeah,
kind of delicate. Like it's delicate when you get too many villains in one movie because I don't like the fact that they kind of didn't wrap up Riddler in this one. Because the same thing happened in James Bond. Like Blowfield was still the main antagonist for the first half of the recent movie, and then Rami Malek comes in and you're like, oh, well, this guy should have been the bad guy the whole time.
yeah.
Instead, we wasted all this time, and then like Rami Malek has like two scenes, and then that's the end of the movie.
Disappears for a bit, comes
Yeah,
back at the end. Yeah,
yeah, I don't love that. And so again, like I probably need to give Matt Reeves more benefit of the doubt because he has done some pretty incredible stuff. He really hasn't missed in a long time. So I'm just there are signs of pessimism that could creep in for me, but I don't want to
same.
let them.
I'm right there with you. I think, and I do have a fair amount of trust
Yeah,
for Matt Reeves. I believe he knows how to handle a trilogy,
yeah, he
especially if
did it
he's
well.
writing it all. Yeah, I mean, the Apes trilogy was
It was
great.
incredible. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean
so
the two he did. I didn't love the first one. It was okay, but he didn't do that one.
yeah,
But he did
but
the second two.
yeah, exactly. So coming in and having to finish a trilogy, I think the fact that he gets his own from start to finish
Yeah,
now is kind of bodes even better for him.
yeah,
So I think like the level of trust is there, but like I think you could probably agree the skepticism is who he decides to pick for characters that get included and then how many.
yeah,
And I imagine Jim Gordon will become commissioner.
yeah, probably. Uh-oh.
Oh, I don't know why my
Oh, we're
video
back.
just chat and tapped out there. Um, I will also say Jeffrey Wright. I thought was damn good
Yeah, he's very good.
as Jim Gordon.
Yep.
I love everything that he's ever been in,
Yeah.
acting wise. Yeah, he's just got a great voice, even with voice acting as the Watcher from the Disney Plus What If series. Um, and a little bit of an older Jim Gordon, which don't see his family or anything like that. Yeah, again, I doubt we'll ever see the inclusion of Barbara Gordon in this trilogy, but I think it would have been cool if we did.
Well, we might. That's kind of
Maybe
what
it's towards
second
the
movies are
end.
for, right? Second
Yeah,
movies are for expanding all the characters you met in the first one. So
yeah,
we could get more Gordon in that one. I think he
yeah,
did
for
a great
sure.
job. I think it's perfect casting.
Yeah,
Um, really, the
agreed.
casting in this overall was pretty perfect.
Yeah, I have no qualms with any of the casting choices. I think top to bottom they did a great job. Um, and I get where some people might have not have been super bought into it, but hopefully by now people have seen the movie and can agree that everyone did a great job in the roles. So,
Yeah.
um, not sure if I have anything else to really say about the movie other than where would you rank it in terms of all the Batman movies?
Oh,
I know this is a super,
Dark Knight is number one. Like,
yeah, agreed,
I don't think you're
agreed.
beating that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
This is better than Dark Knight Rises. I think
Yep,
fairly substantially so. I don't
yep.
think Dark Knight Rises is very good, especially if you rewatch it. It's
It
kind of
has good
messy.
parts, but yeah,
Yeah, there's good scenes, but the plot's kind of a mess.
yeah.
Um, it's really between this and Begins for my second
Okay.
for my second favorite, and I can't really decide which one I like more because I think both of them do really really good things. I think Begins is fairly underrated. Like people kind of forget about it because of how good The Dark Knight is, but Batman Begins is very good on its own. Um,
Yeah,
I think this has a better Batman than Batman Begins, but I think I liked the storyline a little bit more in Begins. I don't know. It's tough. I would kind of put them neck and neck at second, and then all the rest after that. And everything
yeah.
below that to
After
me
that,
kind of is a wash.
yeah, after that it doesn't matter. It's kind of like what's your top three, and then that's
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I would say the interesting thing with Batman Begins is, and maybe a little bit of a comparison and contrast differences of Batman Begins in this movie, having a younger Bruce Wayne and seeing Robert Pattinson, have the slightly long
the
hair with
emo
the
haircut.
the emo.
Yeah,
Yeah, he looks like he listens
scene
to like
kid.
My Chemical Romance,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, had they
uh,
put My Chemical Romance in this movie, I would have about like
I would
I
have
would have
lost
stood
my
up and
shit.
clapped.
Yeah, I was almost waiting for it because damn, that would have been perfect. I hope we need to find a scene and make a little montage clip of my chem and some of the
Yes,
scenes from from
please.
this from this movie. But he was again like emo screamo in this movie. But
Yep.
in Batman Begins, before Bruce goes off and disappears for the beginning of the movie, he was very sort of like emo-ish, right? Like when he
Yeah,
tries
like, he almost
to
killed the guy,
he
like,
almost
brought the gun to the court.
right, and then
Yeah,
gets slapped twice in the
yeah,
face by
and it has, like, the worst, continuity error because
yeah.
his hair is, like, all over his face, and then the next one, it's, like, perfectly parted again.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like he is kind of emo in that movie
No,
as
he is,
well.
yeah.
Um, but and then he goes away and gets trained by Ra's al Ghul and comes back like I'm a
Yeah, it's just
badass.
such a different it's not an origin. Like, this is an origin story for
Yeah,
his, like, Begins is very much like, his parents die and he becomes Batman. This is very much like he is Batman and has to figure out, like, what he's supposed to do about it, and I think it was interesting to see sort of an origin story without being one, right? Because I
yeah,
assume in the second one, he's going to be more hopeful and helping and stuff like that. It's character progression. But it was interesting to see him figuring that out on his own because that never really happened in the Nolan trilogy. That it was really the theme of like being a symbol that can't be torn down, not necessarily like how should you be Batman.
right. Yeah, I like how they also kind of didn't make the Waynes seemingly perfect.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, it's like, hey, listen, they got into some shit, you know.
yeah,
So, and that was the whole sins of the father
yeah.
fall down to the son.
It's a good little reminder that none of us are perfect,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
I mean, it's good to have little, weakness moments in every character. I mean, Robert Pattinson has his own in these, and it's good to have characters that are flawed. If anyone's perfect, they're boring.
Yeah. And I like how Martha wasn't really named that way. Where did you say that name? Um, but yeah, a lot of it was focused around Thomas Wayne,
Yeah,
not so much Martha. But again, establishing there's Arkham from the get go. So I think that
yeah,
they did a lot of good things right from the first movie. And again, I'm excited to see where this goes from here.
yeah,
I imagine we'll probably get solid confirmation of a sequel sometime soon.
yeah,
And hopefully they don't take too long, and hopefully it doesn't get pushed back. Now that things are getting better,
yep,
shooting wise. So maybe 2024, 2025 at the latest is maybe I
yeah.
when I
It
think
should
we'll
be a
probably get a
pretty quick
sequel.
turnaround, I would think.
Yeah. So and I imagine, because Robert Pattinson didn't really get into super shape, that he probably will kind of go that same route. And maybe he will this time, who knows? But at least this way he could probably have a good, comeback and not have to waste any time or any prep.
Yeah. Doesn't get
So
COVID on day one of shooting the movie.
right, yeah, has to push everything back. So, but yeah, I think that's everything I have to say
Yeah,
about this movie. So,
go
would you
see it
give
if
it?
you haven't.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. We both recommend it. I know a lot. I haven't met someone that said it sucked or
Yeah,
that didn't recommend go seeing it.
Ben Shapiro, apparently.
Yeah, I saw something that he said about it, and
Of
I was
course he
like,
dislikes this movie.
I don't know why, but I mean, like,
I
I
know
think,
why, but I won't.
um,
That's a different video.
yeah. So I think for the sake of what we like to discuss in terms of plot, story, character development, the cinematography, the scores, things that actually make up a movie. And if you suck at any of those, well, the movie kind of just goes to shit.
Yep,
So
I thought it nailed all those, so
yeah.
great.
So if you're looking for anything else, then yeah, that'll be cover it. So yeah, everyone, if you're new here, like, subscribe, share with your friends, pet accounts, all that cool stuff. And turn on the bell for future notifications of videos. We'll probably have some new stuff coming up shortly. And catch you on the next one. I'm Batman. Oh wait, I'm Vengeance.
Nah.